Welcome back, everybody, to episode 2 of our Mundane Desperados Premier League podcast. Uh, we took a bit of time off because life happened. I went on vacation, and Christiane doesn't like you all enough to do this by herself.
I just don't know how to talk to myself about this. So,
But we are back, and we're going to talk about the results from Week 10 and the upcoming games for Week 11. So, Christiane, Week
mhm,
10. There weren't that many high profile games this weekend, I feel like. There's the Arsenal Liverpool game, which we'll get
yeah.
to. But other than that, it Everton Manchester United game may have been the other high profile game of the weekend. But let's
Mhm.
start at the beginning.
Okay. Chapter 1.
First game of the weekend, Bournemouth Leicester. Bournemouth won 2-1.
Mhm.
I don't know what's happening with Leicester. Currently they are in last place with 4 points out of 10 games.
Uh-huh.
Or sorry, out of 9 played games.
Yeah.
They have 1 win, 1 draw, and 7 losses.
Correct.
What is going on
Um,
with them?
I think they're slowly imploding.
Because they have a fairly similar team to last year. They still have Jamie Vardy, who hasn't scored this season. He's played in all 9 games and he has 3 assists and no goals.
Mhm.
It's I don't know if it's just Brendan Rodgers. Brendan Rodgers has to be on his last legs. Like he can't have much longer as
Yeah.
manager of that club.
Yeah, I feel like if it keeps up like this, maybe in a month or two he might be gone.
Yeah, I would say probably around, yeah, maybe around World Cup time. If they're in last going into the World Cup, I don't think Brendan Rodgers has a job.
Yeah. Because they'll probably use the World Cup time to find someone new, and then because they're not playing during the World Cup, right? They're taking a break.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, so I could see that happening.
This win puts Bournemouth up in eighth.
Oh.
They have 3 wins, 3 losses, and 3 draws, sitting on 12 points.
3-3-3.
So their last 5 games, they've drawn 3 and won 2. So good for them.
Yeah.
The next game up on the docket from last weekend is the Chelsea and Wolves game.
Chelsea's finally winning again.
They did it, and they looked
Yay.
decisive in that win,
Oh,
which
they look good now.
hasn't happened in a lot of their wins. But
No, I'm
they,
very happy.
I don't know if it's that Potter's scheme is starting to get implemented, or if it's just that they're playing with a renewal. You always see that when you get a switch of managers that the first few games the team comes out trying to prove a point for their new
Mhm.
manager.
It also makes me wonder if it was the players who wanted Tuchel out, and now they're like, all right, now we can play again, because now we don't have to constantly lose to get him fired.
Maybe. Yeah, so 3 goals.
Hmm.
Kai Havertz, Christian Pulisic, and Broha, I think, scored his first goal. And then Mason Mount had 2 assists, and Kovacic had an assist.
I thought Broha scored other goals, but I could be wrong. Could be in other tournaments. Oh, you're right. 1 goal. Damn. Why do I feel like he had scored? Maybe he's just a very good player, so I just assumed he
Well, it
scored
is
more.
interesting. He does play a lot of different positions. One of the times he's subbed in as like a midfielder or defender.
Yeah.
It was an interesting lineup. In the back, we had Chalaba, Koulibaly, Espelicueta, and Circus Tent, Cusarella.
Cucurella. Um, Sorry, before you keep going. Broha scored his first Chelsea goal on his dad's 48th birthday.
Ah, good for him.
So that was a birthday present to his dad. That was the article that came up. Sorry.
No, that's
Moving on.
a fun tidbit.
Hmm.
Then Ruben Loftus-Cheek started. You don't see that very often. Christian Pulisic started. You don't see that very often.
Yeah.
Uh,
I honestly forgot Loftus-Cheek was still in Chelsea.
I mean, fair. He doesn't
Yeah.
he doesn't play that often. He starts occasionally, but that's sort of not the norm anymore. It's sort of the exception, not the rule.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, we looked like a very strong side. Uh,
Mhm.
we had 20 total shots in that game.
Damn.
7 were on target. We won't talk about that. That's not a great percentage. But we also had almost 800 touches and almost 600 passes compared to
Nice.
Wolverhampton's 430. So we sort of pretty dominant in that game, and I think
Mhm.
the scoreline sort of shows that. Next game up was the City Southampton game. Manchester City and Southampton.
It's
Not a
not
very close
fair.
game.
They
Not at
have
all.
a superhuman. I don't even know if we can call him a superhuman. Like, it's not fair.
So the surprising, so of course Haaland scored again.
Uh-huh.
But Foden also scored again, and Foden also got an assist. So the first in the last 3 games, Foden has scored 5 times. And in the last 4 games, De Bruyne has 6 assists. So it's not just obviously the headline is still Haaland scoring 15 goals through 10 games
Mhm.
or 9 games, and in that having 3 hat tricks. But the rest of the team, like they're playing spectacularly defensively.
Mhm.
De Bruyne's picked it up the past few games. Phil Foden's putting it on the past few games. Like they're playing really well, and somehow they're still second to Arsenal. So that just sort of proves how well Arsenal's playing.
And it's crazy because Arsenal has lost, but City has not.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah,
So,
because City has 2 draws
mhm.
and Arsenal has 1 loss. So
Yeah.
that's where that point comes from. Because they're only separated by a point. Arsenal's
Mhm.
first with 24 points, City's second with 23 points. But City's goal differential plus 24, which is mind-boggling. There are only 4 teams in the Premier League so far that through 9 games, through 10 weeks, have let in single-digit goals. One of them, City. Can you name the other 3?
Have let in. Is Arsenal one of them?
Arsenal is not. They have let in 10 goals this season.
Damn.
I will give
Let
you a hint. It is not who you would expect.
Chelsea. It's not
No,
Chelsea.
Chelsea also let in 10.
Dang. Oh, Brighton and Hove.
Brighton and Hove is one of them.
Yeah.
I will give you another one, because I didn't expect this. Everton has only let in 9 goals so far this season.
That is shocking.
They've only scored
Considering how
8.
bad they did in the
They've
beginning.
only scored 8, but they've only let in 9. And the fourth team, Newcastle.
Damn. Anytime I see Newcastle, I just remember of Gold, A Dream Begins. So,
Classic movie.
that classic soccer movie.
But that is the segue. The next game, Newcastle Brentwood. Newcastle just rolled through Brentwood in this game.
Brentford?
Yes, Brentford. What did I say? Brentwood?
Brentwood.
Yep, Brentford.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Uh, 5-1.
Oof.
It wasn't as dominant as a game statistically as you would think. Newcastle only
Mhm.
had 54% possession in the game,
Oh.
and they only had 6 shots on goal. But I guess 5 of the 6 went in, so it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
They only completed about 60 more passes than Brentford did as well, which is surprising.
Oh,
For that scoreline, you would expect a little more
yeah.
domination statistically.
It feels like it was a very even game, except for the score.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, fair. If you see that scoreline, I would have predicted 1-1 or 2-1. Or if
Yeah,
you've seen if these
the
stats,
stats.
yeah.
Yeah.
But Newcastle has been playing very well. With this win, they move up into sixth on goal differential against Brighton and Hove. They're both on 14 points, but Newcastle has a +8 goal differential. So
No,
Newcastle
yeah,
right
after this
now,
game.
yeah, Newcastle right now sits in sixth, 1 point behind Manchester United and 2 points behind Chelsea.
Damn. Who would have thought? Didn't they just come back to the Premier League too?
If it
Or was
wasn't
that
this season, it was last season. But they
yeah.
newly promoted or
Good for
recently
them.
promoted. Because I think not it was Nottingham Forest and Fulham came up this season, right?
Hmm. That sounds right.
And the last game to close out the weekend, again, perfect segue, was Brighton and Hove and Tottenham. This game, I watched most of it.
Mm,
Not a very exciting game. The
I'm
Harry
not gonna
Kane
lie, I didn't
scored
watch it.
in the 22nd minute, and that was sort of about it.
Was it a penalty?
It was not a penalty.
Oh,
It was a really nice goal, but then just sort of nothing really happened the rest of the game. In fact, if you watch the rest of the game, probably would have said that Brighton would have won. Brighton in the possession, 59% to Tottenham's 41, had 14 shots to Tottenham's 8, and had almost 700 passes to Tottenham's 489.
jeez.
So Tottenham sort of dominating the run of play, but just couldn't score.
I feel like that's on par for Tottenham every season. They always come in like strong as if they're gonna win it all, and then like a month in, they're like, and we're back to being an average team.
One thing from the game, with Kane scoring in this game, he has scored in each of his last 4 games, and out of the 9 played games, he has scored 8 goals. So he is the second leading goal scorer
Yeah.
in the Premier League so far this season,
Yeah, but
and
he's
he
not
is
gonna get it.
still
Let's face it.
7 behind Haaland.
So
So he is almost equal his goal total behind the leading goal scorer. So yeah, that's not gonna just give Haaland the golden boot now.
yeah, I mean those are great stats for him, but sorry, dude, you're not gonna get it this year.
So that wraps up Saturday's games. Sunday's games, we started with Crystal Palace and Leeds, which, fine. They're both teams that play in the Premier League.
I watched one of those games. I don't remember which one because it was 6:30 in the morning, and it felt like a very average game. But I could not tell you
Who played?
which game I watched. So I don't know if that bodes well for the teams or what.
I
I feel
mean,
like it was the West Ham that I watched.
with that, with Crystal Palace win, it moves them up to 15th, and with that loss for Leeds, it moves them down to 14th. So they're 1A and 1B
Mm,
with sitting on 9 points. They're just separated by goal differential.
mm.
Leeds has a -1, Crystal Palace is -2. So next game, West Ham and Fulham.
Oh, I thought those two
Also,
were on at the same time. So maybe I did only watch the West Ham game.
yeah. Also, don't really particularly care about that one either.
Yeah.
Sorry, West Ham fans or Fulham fans, but
I like your bubbles, West Ham.
I like your bubbles. That is
It's a
true.
cool
Yeah,
tradition.
yeah. That is maybe the one cool thing about West Ham. And they have a cool stadium, the
They
old
do. They
Olympic
have the
Stadium.
Olympic Stadium, so
Yeah, so you can't win them all, I guess. But
nope.
that score line 3-1. Did not wake up to watch it because kickoff was 6 in the morning.
That's the one I watched.
The next game was sort of the headliner of the weekend, and
Hmm.
boy, was it the Arsenal
They
Liverpool game.
Arsenal scored in like the first minute,
They did.
which was wild. I thought
Martinelli
they were,
scored minute one.
yeah, I thought they were gonna annihilate Liverpool.
Yeah, I mean, when you score in the first minute, you sort of get that.
Yeah.
But then Darwin came back, scored in the 34th. Then Saka scored. I mean, you could argue the half should have been over. He scored at +5 in extra time in the first half.
Mm.
Then Firmino came in because Firmino got subbed in for Diaz in the first because I think Diaz went off hurt, if I can remember that correctly. But then super sub Firmino came in, scored in the 53rd minute, tied up to 2-2. And then Saka putting home a penalty in 76th minute to seal it. But it was a great game. Back and forth.
Hmm.
Both teams wanted it. You could have argued a fair result would have been a tie, and I don't think anyone would have argued. But
I think I was more hoping for the tie, just so, no offense, Arsenal fans, that City could move up to first.
fair. Yeah, each their own. Possession, fairly close. Liverpool with 56%, Arsenal with 44. Shots was 11-8 for Arsenal. Passes was 488 to 386 for Liverpool. So it was a pretty evenly matched game.
Hmm.
I don't know what this means for Liverpool now. I mean, with this loss, they're down in 10th. They've played 8 games. And one of the things we'll talk about eventually is they play City next. So,
Oof.
I mean, watching them play, it really, like, if they can consistently play that well or that close, is this the return of an on form Liverpool?
I don't know.
I don't know. I am surprised that in that game, just how ineffective sort of Mo Salah was. From
Mm.
sort of the superstar he's been for the past, what, 5 years for Liverpool? He got subbed out early in a game that they were losing,
Hmm.
or a game that they were tied, because Saka hadn't scored his penalty yet when he got subbed out. So they were tied. He got subbed out for Fabinho. So maybe that was Klopp playing for a tie or playing for a draw.
Yeah, I could see that.
But also, Salah hasn't scored in his last 5 games. And he only has 2 goals to his name this season. He scored in week 1 against Fulham, and then he scored in week 2 against Manchester United.
Damn.
So his stat lines through 8 games are 2 goals and 4 assists, which are very not Mo Salah numbers. And I think it really is losing Mane. Like, they have pretty much the same team, and I think it's just not having that other dangerous uh, winger or striker out on the other side. I
Yeah.
think now they can load up one side because Firmino, as good of a forward as he is, he's not really a prolific goal scorer. Like, he'll score 10-ish goals a season, but he's not going to be the person putting home like 25 or 30 like Salah and Mane were. But it'll be interesting to see what happens to Liverpool. I mean, like I said, they play City next, which is going to be a tough game, but
Yeah.
then they go through a little easier run, so we'll see if they can start picking up wins. And the last game of Sunday was Everton and Manchester United,
Hmm.
which the first half was really fun to watch. Everton came out hot. Iwobi scored in the 5th minute, and then Manchester United answered with Antony and Ronaldo both scoring. And then just sort of it was back and forth in the second half, but it didn't really feel like anyone had control of the second half of the game. but in terms of stat lines, this was just pure domination by Manchester United. Possession was 60 to 40. The shots on target were close. Manchester United had 4 to Everton's 2. But then you look at the passes, Manchester United at 600, Everton at 375. So maybe a close game in the scoreline, not as close game in the stats. So
Yeah.
Ronaldo coming on, Martial got hurt, so Ronaldo came on as sort of a super sub, and in line or in theme of the weekend, you have these superstars getting subbed on and they immediately produce.
Yeah.
You had that in
With Firmino
oh
coming
yeah,
in?
yeah. You had that in the Arsenal Liverpool game with Firmino coming in and score. They ended up losing, but Firmino's still coming in and producing. And then you had Ronaldo getting subbed in for an injury and immediately producing as well.
Yeah. Good for them.
Good for them.
I'm glad these up and coming players are getting some time.
Yeah, I think Ronaldo has a bright future ahead of him.
Yeah,
He seems like a hard worker.
he seems like a swell guy with a lot of heart. He plays
But
with a lot of heart.
with that win, that puts Manchester United up into fifth on 15 points, which still, with how they started their season,
Yeah.
who would have thought this is where we would be now?
They're lucky they have 15 points.
Yeah. They're still -2 in the goal differential, so they still have a bit of a leaky defense, which may
Mhm.
hurt them against some of the stronger teams. Like last week, sort of saw that in the City game, where they lost 6-3. It seems like they've gotten on the right track, at least in the expectations and form and sort of coherence under their new manager this season, which I will not be able to pronounce his name. Terhagen? Terhag?
Yeah, I don't know.
Whatever.
Sounds close enough.
Close enough. And with that loss, that drops Everton down in a tie for 10th with Liverpool, Brentford, and West Ham. So getting a logjam around there in the
Yeah,
middle of the table.
it's getting crowded over there.
And then the Monday game to end this weekend of games was Nottingham and Aston Villa.
Which
And
100% meant to watch and then 100% forgot was happening.
wouldn't you know it ended 1-1.
Shocked.
Cool.
Shocked, I say.
Ashley Young drank from the fountain of youth and scored in the 22nd minute. Because
Wait,
you're like, hey, is that the same Ashley Young who used to play for Manchester United way back in the day? And that is
still
correct.
play? Oh
Yep.
my god. Good
He
for
is
him.
he is 37. Still out there running around scoring goals.
Yeah, but he's no T Silva.
No, he's not. Not many
No
people
one
are.
is. Yeah.
Stat line? I don't know. Who cares? That's
They care.
I guess. Sure. With that tie, Nottingham still in second to last, and Aston Villa still in 16th. So Aston Villa tied with Leeds and Crystal Palace for 14th. Nottingham Forest sitting on 5 points in 19th place. So a bit of work for them to do. They're sitting at a -15 goal differential,
Oof.
but that's not entirely fair because they lost to City 6-0, and then they
Mm.
lost to Leicester 4-0 for Leicester's only win this season. So,
Good for Leicester.
so we've been going through it a little bit, but the table as it sits now, Arsenal in first place with 24 points.
Uh-huh.
Manchester City, second place with 23 points. Tottenham, third with 20 points. Chelsea, a little bit
Go
farther
Chelsea.
back, in fourth with 16 points.
Go Chelsea.
Go Chelsea. And then Manchester United sitting in fifth on 15 points.
Man.
So A bit tight between Chelsea and Manchester United.
Hmm.
Newcastle, as we were saying, is sixth, tied with Brighton on 14 points. And then we have to round out the rest of the top 10 is Bournemouth on 12 points, Fulham on 11 points, and Liverpool on 10 points. So I know we're still fairly early on, only having played 9 games. Some teams 8 games because Rip the
The
Queen.
Queen.
So Chelsea and Manchester United still have a game to make up. So if you sort of look at that, Chelsea would still be in fourth if they hypothetically if they win that game. They would just only be a point behind Tottenham instead of four.
Yeah, but that makes me feel a little bit better about the point difference.
Yeah, and I mean it's still a long season, still a lot of games to be played,
A lot of soccer left.
which brings us to this week's games.
Whoop, whoop.
We're getting kicked off on Friday. Brentford and Brighton.
Are we doing predictions?
Can
Let's do it.
predictions. Brentford and Brighton.
Brighton.
I will also go with Brighton. Both are a little out of form, having lost and drawn their last two, but
Hmm.
just from what we've seen from Brighton so far this season, they have proven they can score goals, and Brentford lets in a lot of goals. So, going with Brighton. The Saturday slate starts off with Leicester and Crystal Palace.
I'm
I'm
gonna
going to
go
go
with.
with the tie.
Oh, I was gonna go with Crystal Palace.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the draw. I think, I mean, just Leicester has to turn it around. Like,
Yeah.
eventually, with, I just don't know. I, like, because it's not like they're not. Leicester scored 15 goals this season, which
Hmm.
is, I think, fifth or sixth for most goals scored.
Yeah. I mean, it's still a lot, but
Yeah, but they've
still
also
better.
let in 24. So
Yeah.
where Crystal Palace has scored 10 and let in 12. So I think if Leicester's defense can figure out how to not have the other team score at will, just sort of have a firing squad against their goalie, then I don't know. I see a tie in this one. So next game we have Fulham and Bournemouth, which cool. It's right now Bournemouth sitting at 8th with 12 points, Fulham ninth with 11 points. Fulham also though coming off back-to-back losses to Newcastle and to West Ham.
Hmm. Uh, I might say Bournemouth for this one.
I'm also going to go with Bournemouth. I think uh this is also tough because Bournemouth, even though they've won 3, they've only scored 8 goals this season and they've let in 20.
Damn.
So if yeah, it's the same thing. If they can figure out how to just not be a sieve of a defense, I'm gonna actually go with tie again. I'm gonna say this one ends in a draw.
Okay.
Next game, Wolverhampton and Nottingham Forest, which surprisingly, a game to get out of the relegation zone for both teams. Very early on, a lot of games left to play. Right now,
Hmm.
Wolverhampton sitting at 18th with 6 points. Nottingham Forest sitting at 19th with 5 points.
I'm gonna say Wolverhampton.
I will say both teams have only won one game, and Wolverhampton has only scored 3 goals this season.
I'm gonna give our boy Diego Costa a chance and say Wolverhampton.
That is
It's more of
tough.
a hopeful
Yeah, because
prediction.
the last 3 games are sort of a wash for Wolverhampton. They lost to City, which I mean, who hasn't at this point in the season? Then
Chelsea
they,
hasn't yet.
yeah, well, because I don't think we
Yet.
played yet. So
Yet.
Then they lost to West Ham, and then they just lost to Chelsea,
Mhm.
where, yeah, I don't know. I mean, coming off of a draw has to be in the minds of the Nottingham Forest players after losing four straight. So, is this going to be a weekend of draws? Because I'm going to go with another draw.
No. See, at least I'm more hopeful.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
I'm a boring predictor. And then to end this Saturday, we have Spurs and Everton.
Spurs.
Yep, Spurs. I'm gonna go with the Spurs as well. The Spurs coming off of I mean, what ended up being a big win against Brighton and Hove in terms of the table,
Mhm.
and Everton sitting a little lower than they probably expected to be at the beginning of the season, 12th, but uh, coming off of a loss to Manchester United. So I'm gonna go with Tottenham. That takes us into Sunday's game, which kicks off with Chelsea and Villa.
Chelsea. Chelsea.
I am also going to go with Chelsea. Go Chelsea.
Go Chelsea.
Next up is Leeds and Arsenal.
I mean, do I even have to say it?
Yeah, I think Arsenal's going to win. I think they're going to
Yeah.
win pretty handily as well.
Yeah.
Continuing with Manchester United and Newcastle. This one's actually tough. I
I'm gonna say a tie.
I could see it's one of those things I can see either team winning.
Yeah,
Like,
that's why I'm gonna go with a tie.
yeah. Um I am going to say I'm going to go with Newcastle, you know?
Oh.
Because if Newcastle wins, this is a game for fifth.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Newcastle. Wishful
Or
thinking.
fourth if Chelsea loses. So
Yeah, well, no, we just said that they were gonna win though, Christiane.
yeah,
So,
I know they're gonna win.
uh, next game on the Sunday slate is Southampton and West Ham.
Probably a tie.
I'm gonna go with West Ham. West Ham is in a bit of good form. They've won two straight. Granted, those have been against Wolverhampton and Fulham, so not the most competitive of games, but back-to-back wins. I think West Ham is going to come out, and Southampton is on four straight losses. So,
This is their chance for a tie.
okay, yeah. I will go with West Ham. You will go with a tie.
Mhm.
Last game of the weekend, the headliner of the weekend, huge game, big implications. Liverpool and City.
City.
I'm also going to go with City, but I think it's going to be a closer game than I think people expect. But I don't see City losing this game.
Yeah. There's no way they're gonna lose.
So yeah, that's it for this weekend's slate of games. Is there anything that we missed, Christiane?
I don't think so.
As Chelsea fans, we were talking about it earlier. It was just good to see Pulisic back out on the
Mhm.
field. I hope he gets to an opportunity to play more because I mean, he just seems like a workhorse. Whenever he gets put in, he's the person who always brings energy, always brings hustle,
Yeah.
usually is able to put points on the board, either as a distributor or as a goal scorer. But yeah, just especially as a run up to the World Cup, as myself, a someone who will be cheering on the United States team, just good to see him out and playing free flowing soccer again. So,
Yeah.
uh,
And it was cool seeing some other players play because obviously we were resting some of the big ones for Champions League. So
yeah,
it
exactly.
was
Yeah,
nice.
this past game, as we were saying, a lot of newer faces, a lot of subs towards the end of the half, bringing Kovacic on for Loftus-Cheek. bringing Broha on for Mount, and then uh, Hakeem Ziyech, which I feel like him and Kai Havertz have sort of been swapped in and out at the 9 position. But now with
Hmm.
Aubameyang coming in and scoring in the Champions League, you sort of question how much longer they're going to be regular starters.
Yeah.
And then Carney, I will butcher his last name, coming in, I mean, only in the 86th minute, so he didn't have time to make a big impact, but coming in for Conor Gallagher. So, yeah,
Mhm.
a good chance for some people who haven't gotten a lot of playtime to start and play hefty chunks of minutes, but see we'll see how it goes this weekend against Villa. See sort of the lineup and configuration that Potter continues to go with, but so far so good under Potter.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah, we'll just see if we can keep it going.
I think we can.
Thank you everybody for coming back for our second episode of our Premier League podcast for Mundane Desperados. Hopefully going forward, we're going to be able to do this a little more consistently. With that being said, next week we are probably not going to get an episode up in time because the games are Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. But we'll
Oof.
probably be back for game week 13 for those slate of games. So if you liked anything that you heard, or if you want to keep coming back to hear us talk dumb about the Premier League or watch any of our other videos, give us a subscribe, give this video a like, comment about what we were wrong about or what we got right, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye now.